Excellent. Thank you. Good evening and welcome. Today is Tuesday, September 13th, 2022, and this is a public hearing and regular meeting of the Governing Board of the Litchfield Elementary School District. I hereby convene the public hearing, which is how we will begin our agenda this evening. We have a presentation on the revised expenditure budget for fiscal year 2023. This is the first revision and will be presented by Executive Director Vaughn.
Is Mr. Vaughn talking? I can't hear him.
All right. Madam President, members of the governing board, Superintendent Gunning, colleagues and community, thank you for joining me tonight to discuss the district's first budget revision for fiscal year 2023. State statute allows districts to revise their budget by September 15th if the state budget was not adopted by May 1st. The state budget that impacts this fiscal year was signed into law on June 28th. The purpose of the September budget revision is to recognize changes in the funding formulas adopted in the state budget. The district uses fund accounting and adopts budget for many different funds. Each fund has a unique revenue sources and allowable uses. The district's largest funds are maintenance and operations, or M&O, which supports daily operating costs, people, and programs, and unrestricted capital outlay, which supports building improvements, furniture, equipment, technology, and other items that will be used longer than a year. The funding formula changes included in the state budget impacts both maintenance and operations and capital budgets. For M&O, the funding district received per student increased 7.42% to $4,775.27. There was also an increase to the additional M&O funding districts received for certain special populations of students, including some special education populations that need the most support. Arizona School District's M&O budget is set by statutory formulas that consider many factors. The formula is driven in large part by weighted student counts, which considers average daily membership or the number of full-time equivalent students served by the district, and the students' characteristics such as special education status to determine how much funding will be made available to the district to serve its students. Funding is also made available for transportation, which considers daily route miles driven to transport students to and from school. The district's first revised budget is driven off of the estimates on the slide. ADM estimates for the year were updated from the adopted budget to reflect the average daily membership we've experienced through September 1st and a growth rate consistent with what was experienced last year between the 40th and 100th day. On this slide, you can see a comparison of the budget available in M&O and its various sources compared to the adopted budget. The revenue control limit is the funding provided from the funding formula I described on the previous slide. It is the ongoing funding generated to support the district students. The increase in revenue control limit is being driven by the changes in funding formula we've discussed tonight. The district's M&O budget was developed considering guidance provided by the governing board at the April 12th governing board meeting, where the projected budget for fiscal year 2023 was approved. As such, it reflects compensation increases, including performance award advancements, 2% performance pay, raising the district's minimum hourly pay to $15 an hour, additional pay increases by employee category. As a reminder, the district was able to make these increases available to employees because the district anticipated the additional funding we're seeing in the revised budget. This budget also reflects positions being transitioned back to M&O from the district's COVID-19 ESSER II grant, contracted guest guest teachers, and additional classroom aides as reflected on the board-approved projected budget. As a result, 83.6% of the district's M&O budget is budgeted to be spent on salary and benefits, and 72.5% of the spending is in the classroom, including instruction, student support, instructional support, co-curricular athletics, and the K-3 reading program. As a reminder, unrestricted capital outlay funds support construction, remodels of facilities, equipment, textbooks, and other items that will last the district longer than a year. Similar to M&O, unrestricted capital outlay resources are provided to the district via a statutory formula that considers average daily membership or full-time equivalent students served by the district and a funding amount per student. Unrestricted capital outlay considers a prior year student count when determining funding, unlike M&O, which considers current year membership. Here you can see a year-over-year comparison of the unrestricted capital outlay budget limit. Most of the increase in the fund is being caused by more funding carrying over into fiscal year 2023 than initially anticipated. This was caused by expenditures that were originally budgeted for, but did not come to fruition in fiscal year 2022. As a reminder, budget carry forward is one-time funding available to the district and cannot be anticipated each year. Carryover only builds when the district lives within its means, spending less than the budget capacity being generated. The additional capital funds will largely be held in reserve pending the results of the facility review approved by the governing board at the August 30th, 2022 board meeting. That analysis is designed to provide the district with an assessment of the condition of all district facilities and provide recommendations to remedy facility condition concerns. The unrestricted capital outlay budget is split between facility improvements, replacements of furniture, equipment, and vehicle purchases. The remainder of the budget will be available for textbooks, library books, and instructional materials. The district's M&O and unrestricted capital outlay budgets discussed tonight are funded in part by local property taxes. The state funding formula for education includes a qualifying tax rate, which sets a consistent starting point for the expected community support of school districts across the state. From that starting point, the levy, or total dollar amount expected to be collected in taxes from the primary tax rate, is adjusted based on certain local factors. Secondary tax rates are set to support voter-approved initiatives such as the district's M&O override and bond program. These two amounts, along with the community's assessed valuation or the value of taxable property in the district, set the tax rate. In total, the district's combined tax rate declined as shown on the slide. For tax purposes, the state limits increases to the individual homeowner's experience in their valuation to 5% a year. Based on the capped increase in valuation and the decline in tax rate, we estimate an average taxpayer will see a small reduction in their property taxes from the district. The revised budget we're discussing tonight and the increased funding I presented is based on the state budget that was passed by the legislature and signed by the governor. However, despite the funding already being appropriated to Litchfield and other districts, it may not ultimately be available to districts to spend. This is because of a clause in the Arizona Constitution that limits total budgeted spending by Arizona school districts. The limit considers spending in schools in 1980 and adjusts each year for inflation and enrollment. Recent changes to school funding have caused districts to exceed the limit statewide. One of the largest contributing factors is the additional funding schools received that was initially passed by voters as Proposition 301 in 2000. As a voter approved initiative, it was excluded from the limit, but when the legislature voted to continue it it lost its exemption and is now considered part of the aggregate expenditure limit. Districts, including Litchfield, will have to cut their budgets to be in line with the aggregate expenditure limit if the legislature does not waive the limit by a 2/3 majority by March 1st. The limit was waived last year, but if it was not, the cut to Litchfield would have been $11.7 million. This year, it's anticipated the cuts would be even more due to the increase in state funding. There is some thoughts in the school finance community that a special session of the legislature may be called prior to this year's election to address the aggregate expenditure limit. I'll keep the board apprised of any updates on the aggregate expenditure limit as we hear more. At this time, I'm available to answer any questions you may have on the district's first budget revision for fiscal year 2023.
Thank you, Executive Director Vaughn. I would like to start the conversation by asking about the planned spending. So when I look at this report that you just presented, I see an additional $3.9 million in M&O and $2.9 million in capital over what this board had approved at our previous meeting this summer. So can you tell me what the plan is for utilizing those additional funds?
Sure. So as I previously stated, the changes in spending approved by the governing board for this fiscal year anticipated this additional funding. So initially, the budget that was approved did not actually include all of the spending that was initially approved because we weren't able to budget higher than the budget limit at that time under the old funding formulas. So presently, the plan is that the additional funding will just support what has already been approved.
Okay, that is not my understanding, and I would appreciate some other board member input as well. My understanding of the budget that we approved was that we were spending more money, but that we were going to be utilizing some of our carry forward and rainy day funds and other funds that we have been saving through the years because we wanted to impact academics. So do any other board members have a different recollection of that conversation or discussion?
No, that was my same understanding, that we were spending money that was carryover funds from previous years.
To me, if I remember correctly, the carry forward was about 16 million. And now the carry forward is 10 million.
We are anticipating the carry forward into fiscal year 2023 to be 10 million, yes.
10 million, so.
In M&O or?
Yes, in M&O.
Okay, so the budget that we approved, we wanted to take that down to 8 million.
Okay.
We were more than happy to do that because we have a significantly higher percentage of carryover funds than other districts and what is recommended by the ASBA and their finance team. So we wanted to spend down into those funds to impact academics in this district. So I personally am not satisfied with saying we're getting more funding and we're not going to spend that on the students that we have this year. But I would love to hear other board member feedback on that.
Kim, may I share a comment? This is Danielle.
Go ahead, Danielle.
I just want to sort of throw my hat into the ring that yes, speaking for me personally, and I'm not exactly sure how the conversation went back all of those months ago, but I think we were all very comfortable with spending money, that we had in reserves, because I don't think we were comfortable spending money that we didn't yet have. So even though we were anticipating this money, we certainly weren't counting on it because it wasn't money in the bank, so to speak. So I don't think this board would have been comfortable with, doing these 4 or 5 things that you have or that you just listed, which are extremely important, not knowing if that funding was going to come in. So to me, the answer to that always was coming from that carry forward amount, however much we needed to dip into that. So I'm in agreement that, this is a gift we rarely see. And I understand we still have to work with the aggregate spending limit and the political fallout from what that might be. But I think we need to have a very detailed plan of how this money is going to be spent directly to help our children and their academic progress. That's exactly what this money is for. I don't think putting it in our bank account is where it needs to go. We need to be spending this directly on increasing our kids' academic performance immediately.
Like what I guess the question is, where did we miss the $2 million? We had 16. We said we got enough for pay raises. We got enough for $15 minimum wage. Where do we miss the boat here between the 8 and the 10? We asked we gave direction to get the carry forward down to around 8 million. Does anybody we have to do research on that or?
Yeah,
I
I
think-
would, oh, sorry.
I'm sorry, there are two factors. So we have carry forward in M&O and we have additional funds available. The additional funds available, I believe, are in the DAA. So we actually have two pots of money that are these like rainy day funds. And we approved a budget that spent both of those down from where they are now. So we approved 8 million in M&O of carry forward and 15.7 million in the additional funds available in the DAA. We're now looking to approve 12.8 million in just the carryover, but the entire fund is at 18.6 million. So again, we're just adding to our coffers rather than spending the money on academics, which is what we're supposed to be doing. And I understand that the aggregate expenditure limit has not been approved. However, I put it in the notes and I believe all the board members saw it, but I will make the statement publicly as well. Although it is possible that the aggregate expenditure limit will not be passed, it is not probable. The state has continued to lift that limit every single year, and there will be a massive uproar from not only parents, but also educators in the state, because every district will be looking at multi-million-dollar cuts if that's not lifted. So I don't want us to plan for something that's not probable. I want us to plan for what we know, which is we can utilize this money to impact our student success now. We have ESSER funds that are left over. We've been doing some programs that have proven to be impactful to student success. And I want to see these funds utilized.
My recollection is that we was to spend the money for what it's worth.
Thank you, Board Member Honak.
Okay, I have a question and then I have a comment about the AEL. The question is, this fiscal year 23 adopted says that we're going to have 10 million carryover, but we said 8. So I'm trying to figure out why there's a difference on that number specifically when we wanted it to be 8 when we approved it, but it says 10. So if somebody can explain why those don't match from our all understanding.
Okay, what I think that answer is due to is our previous executive director has always been very conservative. And we approved that based on the fact that the 2021-2022 year had not yet ended. And so we have these encumbrances every year that we have to hold on to that potentially could be spent. But historically, the projection that we get, the actual number that we end up in carry forward has always been $1 or more million higher.
Okay, and then as far as the aggregate expenditure limit, I hear what everyone is saying about we said to spend this money, and I was right there with everybody saying spend this money, but the feedback I'm hearing from a lot of people, legislators, people that are in with legislators all the time, is that there is a real potential that this is the year that they are not going to do it. And it's coming down to certain political things that may or may not happen in the next couple of weeks that are going to impact whether or not they decide to call that special meeting. And then we're going to have a whole new group of legislators next year making the decision of whether or not to lift it. And I don't know if we want to leave that into their hands and potentially spend all this money, which I think would be great if we could do. But what if we agree to spend all this money and then we have to not be able to do it at the end of the year?
I understand your concern and I do validate that. My concern is that if and when the aggregate expenditure limit gets lifted, it's going to be too late to spend this money in this current school year or even the next school year. We learned that with the ESSER funds. We were given a gift and it has taken us, in my opinion, too long to spend that money. So we know this is not a fast process. I would like to see plan A, plan B, plan C. I want to see if AEL isn't lifted. I want to see if the override doesn't pass. I want to see a best case and a worst case scenario and every scenario in between, because if we don't have that plan in place and we don't know what the options are, when we do know, it's going to be 6 months down the road before we even know what we want to do with the money. So we need to start planning for all of these scenarios instead of just sitting back and waiting to see what happens. At least then we can know, not that the board has to vote on that, but the administration should have those plans in place so that when these pieces fall into place, we have a plan.
I go back to what's the difference between the 8 and the 10? We asked for 8 carryover, 8 million carryover. What did we miss that we could spend that money on to improve academics, to enhance whatever that we're going to try to do here. That's the question. As I see it, the question is, at this point in time, we asked for no more than $8 million carryover. There's 10. Is most of that, I see the indirect cost funds as part of the carryover, is it not?
It is not.
Okay. And we still got the same amount of indirect cost monies as we had before, which is a little over $6 million. That can be used for pay raises. It can be used for whatever we want to use it for, correct?
We would need to be careful because there's a distinction between ongoing revenue that we can anticipate coming in each year and the fund balance that we're discussing now. Fund balance is one time. And if you were going to compare it to something in personal finance, it's your savings account. And so it would be most appropriately used if you're going to use it for one-time spending, because once you spend that down, you don't have that revenue coming in anymore. The only way fund balance builds up is by spending less than you're bringing in. And so if we were to approve additional raises, as an example, based on fund balance, we would be moving towards a structurally unsound budget because you're matching ongoing expenses to one-time funding sources.
I agree that
I'm not
just,
seeing on the indirect costs. I look at that every board meeting that's available. And I'm not seeing much of a drawdown on that. It's approximately about 80,000. Anyway, it's about, it continuously stays right around 6.2, 6.3.
The reason you're seeing that fund balance stay right around there is in the indirect cost fund, we have done a fairly good job of matching our annual expected expenses in that fund to the annual expected revenue. What we primarily pay for out of the indirect cost fund is salaries and benefits of certain employees.
Understood.
And so you won't see it being spent in large chunks because it's being spent each pay period as those employees work.
In other words, that's one of our savings buckets. That's why you're not seeing it move.
Yeah. And what the point being, indirect cost monies, it supports grants and things of that issue or of that nature. We should maximize the salaries for the people who administer that grant. And we've had discussions before on this.
Yes.
To where we don't take it out of M&O. The indirect cost monies is designed to support that program that we received the money for. And I've never been in the school district where we continuously have the same amount of indirect cost monies.
I have actually started doing an analysis comparing our rainy day fund balances to a select number of Arizona school districts that have the highest bond ratings. The reason I picked that as a peer group to compare us against is because bond ratings are very similar to an individual's credit score. And so it's a indication of how fiscally sound the organization is being. When you compare our rainy day fund balances to those other districts with the highest bond ratings in the state and adjust it for the amount of spending that we do each year, our rainy day fund balances aren't drastically higher than that peer group average. I would certainly welcome a more detailed discussion on that topic. One of the things I would like to see in the future is potentially some regulation around where we as an organization would like that rainy day fund balance to be. If we were to be able to get to that point, that would allow the organization to target certain levels of rainy day fund balance and build around that. In best practice in governmental finance, you don't see it a lot in school districts, but potentially in states and municipalities. You see where they set different levels of balance in their rainy day fund, and you have certain triggers. You know, if it gets to a certain level on the low side, it triggers a certain budget movement that would work to build it back up. If it gets to a certain point at the high level, you start looking at, again, like I said, those one-time expenses that you can consider to potentially spend that back down to a more appropriate level.
What
Mr.
I'm
Chair,
hearing from you is that if we want to spend extra money, it would be responsible of us to do it as one-time expenses versus salary things. That would be what you would recommend if we were looking at spending more money.
Yes, if we're looking at spending, fund balance, because that's really just, if you will, leftover money. It's not a reoccurring revenue stream. And so it would be most fiscally prudent to spend that on one-time expenses and not on salaries and benefits, which are recurring.
I
So
agree.
instead of
Can
giving raises,
can anyone hear me? Or-
talk about
Hello?
a stipend thing for staff.
Sure,
instead.
if it was a one-time
This sucks.
salary and benefit
Okay.
increase as opposed to an ongoing raise, yes.
There could be a stipend, but there could also be some sort of academic programming that maybe isn't employee related. You know, we were fortunate enough to get the funding through ESSER to buy our math curriculum. That was the first I had heard that math curriculum was something that we needed. And I'm not in the classroom every day. I don't know what those needs are, but I have a feeling there are probably many other supports in the curriculum area or other classroom one-time expenditures that would be appreciated and welcomed by our classroom teachers. Not to say that stipends wouldn't also be part of that, but I think there are a lot of conversations that could be had on the possibilities of what we could do if we are willing to spend some of this money, whether it's one time or recurring. So the M&O is also higher. So don't, it's not all one-time funding because our M&O, the per pupil funding has gone up. Now, could that go back down? Yes, it could, but we can't plan for every scenario down the road. But right now it sounds like we have 3 or 4 scenarios that we probably should be specifically planning for.
Can you tell me the process? Tonight, you're presenting this, but what's the process going forward? Because there's obviously a lot more information we want, and we're not going to get this all hammered out tonight. So tell me what we're looking at.
Yeah,
for the
that's a great
timeline.
question. So the budget that we're presenting tonight is basically a budget showing the increased capacity using the state forms. If we approve the budget, there's nothing saying that we can't come back and with a plan on how to spend some of this money. Even if the budget increases aren't exactly in the right spots in the budget I presented tonight, what would end up happening is on the next revision, we would just move that budget capacity to wherever it needed to be to support the spending that we decided to move forward with.
Okay, so there, just to recap, tonight we're approving this revised budget because we have revised numbers from the state. And this, we're not locked into these particular buckets just because we approve this budget tonight. Because right now we're just accepting the money. We're saying, yes, please, we want this money. And then we can continue the conversation to determine the exact spending plan for that money.
Yeah, so we have that flexibility.
I've got a question on that. When when the state approves the limit to exceed the limit. Now, the state last year in the budget, and we've talked about that, approved by almost $800 million for additional state per pupil aid, wasn't it? When we get that, we're going to have to come back anyway, or no?
No, this already reflects what will be the case if the aggregate expenditure limit is lifted.
Okay.
What will happen if the aggregate expenditure limit is not lifted is we will have to come back to reduce the budget.
Got it.
Lifting the aggregate expenditure limit just lets us exist as is. It wouldn't provide any additional.
Additional relief. Okay.
Okay, Board Member Honak or Board Member Clymer, do you have anything else you would like to add to this discussion?
Hello, can anybody hear me?
Yes, I can hear you,
Yes.
Mr. Honak.
Okay, I've been trying to comment for 10 minutes. I've been texting Jody, trying to text Amy, and this is really unbelievable. It's unbelievable. And this is so outrageous. And I'm going to go on a rant about a point of order that the Kimberly Moran broke the law to
That is
interrupt
not a
me.
point of order, Mr.
Well, that,
Honak.
okay, you know what?
Point of
So
order
I
has to
can't,
do with the
I can't talk for
procedural
10 minutes. And
error
right now you're talking
Robert's
over
Rules
me.
of order.
You know what? I'm trying to talk. I haven't been able to talk for 10 minutes. LESD cannot figure out how to make audio and YouTube work. And so I have been trying to talk for 10 minutes. Honestly, I don't remember every comment, but one of them I will say right now is that I agree with the assessment of I can't move my thing over now. Son of a gun. Okay, I have I agree. I understand completely, and Ms. Zaidama, acknowledge that we got the one-time funds, and we don't want to be raising salaries, which is just like a leak in a bucket on a chunk of money that's savings that's not going to be replenished. But it's beyond that. We need a paradigm. We need to think of something, not just, oh, let's spend $1.8 million on a math program that nobody has any evidence that it works, which we just did a while ago. We need to figure out something that's new and different so that our students can learn math, and that would be perhaps a one-time thing. So perhaps we should ask the superintendent to come up with some evidence-based program that's going to raise our math scores to, whatever percentage, a big percentage, we need to raise them. How about at least half our graduates going to high school knowing math, instead of just sort of setting a goal and then, she gets a raise or gets her bonus, whether or not we have it. So right now we're sitting here kind of all complaining that money wasn't spent we wanted to spend, but what do? We just spend it on we're supposed to be a school board that's trying to make our schools better, and so we it's pretty obvious we need some sort of an initiative that is scientifically based, that there is evidence that it will raise it. I suggested last time that maybe we go look at another school district that actually has figured out how to get high achievement scores instead of sending 2/3 of their students to high school not knowing math. There's about 5 million different ways that we can do it. Other countries do it. Other schools do it. One of them 13 miles away in Alhambra, but I think we're sitting here saying the money should be spent, but as a board, we're not really pointing, we're not doing our job of pointing a direction. So I'm just throwing out as one idea. The other day I said 8th graders, and Miss Moran said, oh, so you only think we should make the goals about 8th graders? No, it needs to start with before preschool. If we're really a good district, we should be encouraging parents in the importance of early childhood. But there are people smarter than me. I know some that really know how to do it. But that's what we need as an initiative. If we're dying, I'm sure for a few $100,000, we could get some pretty smart people to come up with a plan how to raise our academics. But nobody around here seems to care. They just want to talk. I'm done for now.
Thank you, Board Member Honak. Board Member Clymer, do you have anything you'd like to add?
Yes, I have one clarification and then one request, please. So my clarification, anyone on the board or Michael is able to answer would be great. I know our conversation, we started talking about indirect cost and one-time solutions potentially, and not doing reoccurring costs. I understand all of that, but I just want the clarification as we're talking specifically about the additions to per pupil spending and capital. Those are, as far as we know, and as they have always been, will be reoccurring revenue streams. They will be the same next year and the year after and the year after. Now, of course, we never know what the legislature is going to do, but I just want to clarify that those are not one-time monies. Is that correct? I mean, those are things that we get every year. So if the per pupil spending limit increased this year, we can expect it will stay the same next year, barring any, obviously anything crazy at the legislature. Can you confirm that that is what we're talking about?
If I understand your question correctly, can you see the slide I have up?
I cannot know. If you just tell me what number it is, I can pull it up on my own.
Slide 10.
Thank you.
So this is the detail on the unrestricted capital outlay or capital budget. And what you're seeing is that we have 471,000 of additional reoccurring revenues. The 2.5 million is an updated estimate of the carryover. So initially, we had anticipated that 10.4 million of capital would be coming into FY23 from previous years. We now estimate that to be 12.8. So that 2.4 million increase is one-time money.
How is that one-time money? I mean, this spending, the per pupil spending, we will get money per pupil every year. So the increased limit this year will be the same as next year and going forward. So how is that money specifically one time?
That money isn't, but that money is what the 470,000 is, whereas the 2.4 million is one-time money.
Let me give
Okay.
this a shot. The first
I'm-
line
you're
on
not-
the
you're
slide,
not
the
answering the question.
AA number is based on our average daily membership, and that's a dollar amount that we get each year. So that's the funding that we should be able to expect $5 million again next year if our average daily membership is the same. The budget carryover number is basically our savings account. So that's the piece where right now we're saying we're going to have $12.9 million in our savings. And I would be really curious to see what the detailed plan for spending that savings amount is. I've never seen a plan for that. I'm not sure if any other board members have.
Right. I guess that's what I'm saying. I understand the difference between our savings account and one-time money. I understand that. But what I'm saying, there is an increase in our ongoing revenue from last year to this year, and we will have the same thing next year. So I just wanted to confirm that not every piece of funding we're talking about right now is only one time. There is still additional money there that will be there moving forward, I guess is the only point I want to make, whether it's 400,000 or 400 million. Like it doesn't matter the amount. I'm just saying we're not only talking about one-time money. But aside from that clarification, my request is, and Kim, I think you mentioned something similar in one of your questions earlier, is that regardless of whether the override passes or it doesn't, which we will know in just a couple of months, same with the aggregate expenditure limit, as an $80+ million business, we should have budgets aligned with each one of those options. Right now, we should be able to say where we are going to get the money if and when those things happen, and if and when those things don't happen. So I would expect to see us have additional information as a board that is showing what the district's plan is, if we have plan A, plan B, or plan C. And that's what we don't have right now. So to Jeremy's point in coming up with initiatives that are going to enhance our academic success, absolutely. but we need to have different options based on some pretty important things that are coming up in the next couple of months. And what we're being presented here tonight doesn't seem to do that. It basically just sort of squirrels everything away in our savings account and says, we're just going to wait and see what happens and we'll let you know in January. And I'm worried that, to Kim's point earlier, also, when we get to next year, it's going to be too late to spend it for the kids that are in our school today and need these programs and need these gaps filled in their education. And we should, I mean, we talk all the time about not having enough money, and we've been given these gifts, whether they're one time or ongoing, and we should take out our wish list right this minute and create a budget for all of these things. And I don't understand why we're not doing that. We have a lot of opportunities in front of us in the next couple of months, and we should be looking at 3 or 4 different plans right now of how to use those funds. And so I'd like to request that we see something very similar to that prior to, the override and what may or may not happen with the aggregate expenditure limit.
Well
Okay.
spoken. I suggest that we, whatever the official way of doing it is, we just say, Superintendent Gunning, we charge you with doing research and finding out how we can raise academic scores by 20% this next year, the next 12 months or whatever. Just pick some number. We pick some goal. Maybe we reach it, maybe we don't. It doesn't really matter, but at least you pick a goal that somebody's trying to do something about. Right now, that's not happening. And believe me, we should spend some money on somebody that has a little more brains than a lot of us, that know darn well how to teach math to kids. Okay, they can do it with mimeograph multiplication tables and things like that we can't do with a $2 million software. So, but we need to go look for those people. It's like we think that everything's got to come from, our district and friends of administrators and whatever, and just the normal type of people that we're hiring. There are people out there, and a headhunter will find one very fast, a bunch of them.
Thank you, Board Member Honak. So I think we have the information that we need to move forward tonight. We have an agenda item later on our agenda to approve the revised budget, again, which is really just approving that we are willing and happy to receive these funds, and we will continue the discussion on how they will be spent. Superintendent Gunning or Executive Director Vaughn, when can we expect to have another conversation on this? You can take a moment to compare calendars if needed.
It will take some time to put together those scenarios and come up with some good plans for the governing board to consider. I don't want to downplay that. We can certainly provide updates along the way, either directly to the governing board or in meetings. We could definitely have those plans in place, obviously, before the November elections. If October would be a reasonable timeframe, that would allow us some time to work through those issues.
Yeah, I would like to keep this conversation in the public and as transparent as possible, because these are taxpayer dollars that we're talking about. So yeah, I think ideally if we could have another conversation. I do understand that there is a fair amount of work that needs to go into scenario planning. It does not just happen on its own. Obviously, not only for yourself, Executive Director Vaughn, but also the entire cabinet that would need to get together and figure out what these plans would look like and pros and cons to each one. So yeah, if we could set a date a month from now at the October 18th meeting to revisit and hear more, I would be good with that. Any other board member feedback on that timing?
I'm good with October.
October's good.
October is fine with me. Thank you.
Board Member Honak? Okay, I'm going to take that as October is good. Thank you. I appreciate that. If you have any clarifying questions, though, in that process that you need from the board, feel free to put that in a Friday update and we can respond individually and give you some additional feedback as you're getting through those scenarios. So don't feel like you have to go into that blind and guess what it is that we want to see. We do have a study session as well at the end of September, and I think it's already pretty packed. But if you have some initial items that you'd like to discuss during that opportunity in the public, we could do that as well to make sure that you have, more solid scenarios when you come back in October.
Thank you for the direction and I appreciate the opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we will now move on to agenda item 1C, which is opportunity for public comment. This opportunity for public comment will be run in the same way that all of our public comment is run. I will read the disclaimer. Pursuant to ARS 38-431.01H, this agenda item provides an open call to the public, allowing individuals to address the governing board on any issue within the jurisdiction of the board. Items not listed on the agenda may be brought to the governing board's attention under this section of the agenda. Due to the Arizona open meeting law, the governing board cannot discuss or take any action on items not listed on the agenda. Therefore, pursuant to ARS 38-431.01H, response to public comment about matters not appearing on the agenda will be limited to individual board members who may ask staff to study the matter, respond to any criticism, or ask that the matter be put on a future agenda for further consideration and decision at a later date. Please limit your comments to no more than 3 minutes, and no more than 30 minutes will be devoted to the public comment portion of the agenda. When you approach the podium, please state your name for the record. For clarification, we will have 2 opportunity for public comments this evening. If you filled out a yellow sheet, this will be the first opportunity that you will have to speak. And if you filled out a white sheet, I will call your name at the next opportunity. Our first public commenter in the public hearing section is Deborah Bohm.
It is my listening to this process that's going on disturbing to me that the board and the district CPA have not already managed to have this discussion prior to this meeting. It's disturbing to me that you're still depending on ESSER money that's going to be disappearing. It's disturbing to me that you're offering to blackmail the district parents and taxpayers with the thought that if the override does not go through, that the extra things like art and music will be disappearing. It's disturbing to me, especially when I know that the Arizona legislature planned more money into education rather than less. What it means to me is that the money has been misallocated for inappropriate activities and or people. The school district as a whole has an extremely poor reputation at this time. And I, for one, and I do have a group of people who listen to me, will be urging them not to vote for the override, as you have not proven over the whole entire past year that you are economically or financially sound in this area.
Our next participant is Mike Finnegan.
Hello, everyone. My name is Mike Finnegan. I find it interesting due to Wendy Quall's fiscal responsibility, this rainy day fund has accumulated. And now once the board has become aware of it, it seems like they want to get their hands on it and use it. This district and every district in the country is flush with more money than they've ever had coming out of Washington from the American CARES Act, and also ESSER funding that has not even been spent yet. And yet you want to get your hands on the rainy day fund. I don't know if you realize that we are on a head-on collision with a recession due to runaway inflation. And when the Federal Treasury Department has to start raising interest rates to tame down inflation, it's going to have an impact on employment. Companies are going to have to lay off. Things are going to contract seriously, maybe like you've never experienced before. So I think we've had this rainy day fund sitting there. From what's coming towards us head on, it seems to be prudent to maybe hold on to it a while longer, because you may need it, seriously need it. Per pupil funding in Arizona has increased every year for the past 8 years. This year's budget includes the most significant yearly increase for K through 12 education funding in the last 8 years, $13 billion. Since January 2015, the state has made an $11.8 billion cumulative investment in K through 12 education. Funding is not the problem for this district, nor is it this academic solution. Highly effective teachers will solve the academic problem. The Goodyear City Council has recently lowered the property tax rate to relieve taxpayers' burden due to inflationary rises to their property values. This month, I think I'm running out of time, so I think I'll leave it at that.
Our next commenter is Cynthia Schwartz.
Good evening. I'd like to make one comment that the candidate forum is on the first night of Yom Kippur, the most holiest day in the celebration of Judaism, just to let you know. Insofar as the budget, sitting here listening to this conversation, it was like a cyclone hit. I think it became clearly evident that the district has never had a strategic plan. Every single meeting, I hold up the slide that this is our strategic plan. This is not a strategic plan. I don't know why the administration has not come up with a 5-year plan. I don't know why we don't have concrete goals for academic success. And then I want to divert just for a second. I support Mike Finnegan on a lot of his comments. Read the New York Times article this week. School districts have not spent billions of ESSER funds, and they will probably run out before they do it. Read the New York Times about Goldman Sachs. I am a former Goldman Sachs employee. They're going to be laying off a lot of people. Wall Street is predicting a recession. And I'm not sure that this administration is even tuned into the outside world, outside of these 4 walls within the district. I think the big elephant in the room is Dr. Doozy. Everybody talks about academic success, but no one mentions her name. We talk about, Kim Moran talked about programs proven to be impactful. We talk about academic success. There's no detail. And Dr. Doozy, I wish you the very, very best of luck, but no one ever has come up with a strategic plan for this district, and money is not going to solve the problem. I sent an email out today or the other night, and I hope most of you read it, where I did my own analysis of the academic progress in this district. I know Dr. Dowling was kind enough to say he got it, along with Mr. Honak. Didn't hear from anybody else. If you take a look at the kids in this district, your 7th graders are the most at risk group. But we've got lollipops and rainbows out there when the district, when the superintendent presented the performance the academics or the ASAR, whatever you call them, AZ merit scores, and tried to compare them against the goal and against other districts. Compare this district with Massachusetts, not with Arizona. That's 49th or 50th in the state.
That is the end of the call to public in our public hearing. I will entertain a motion to adjourn the public hearing.
I motion to adjourn the public hearing.
I will second. Having a first and a second, I will call for the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Hi.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. I now call to order the regular meeting of the Governing Board of the Litchfield Elementary School District. We will begin this meeting with item 2B, the Pledge of Allegiance. Please stand and join me.
To the flag, of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all.
Please be seated. Our next agenda item is moment of silent reflection. Please join me in a moment of silent reflection. Thank you. Next on our agenda is item 4A, recognitions and celebrations, which will be presented this evening by Superintendent Gunning.
Madam President, members of the governing board, tonight I'm excited to celebrate our food services department and Chef Ron. We'd like to celebrate their outstanding nutrition services department. The department is made up of a team of food and nutrition professionals that are dedicated to students' health, well-being, and the ability to learn. We support the learning by promoting healthy habits for lifelong nutrition and fitness. They have worked tirelessly, of course, over the summer for our summer feeding programs, as well as kicking off our brand new year and bringing back all of our staff and providing staff brunches for us, as well as bringing back and educating our families on the free and reduced lunch application, because remember that kind of sat away for a little while. And so we had to get that back. And the numbers are looking really good in that area. So we definitely have a lot of people participating, which means that their communication and their efforts are working. Chef Ron and his team met the challenge of serving nutrition free lunches to all of our students in the prior years during COVID, and definitely in a time frame where supplies were not always as plentiful as the demand. The team provided all of our staff lunches in 3 different locations. And I know many of you were able to visit those yummy lunches. And this dedication to our students and our staff is why we celebrate Chef Ron and the entire nutrition services department.
Thank you, Chef Ron. We appreciate you. Our next agenda item is community opportunity for comment. Similar to our previous opportunity for comment, I will read the disclaimer. Pursuant to ARS 38-431.01H, this agenda item provides an open call to the public, allowing individuals to address the governing board on any issue within the jurisdiction of the board. Items not listed on the agenda may be brought to the governing board's attention under this section of the agenda. Due to the Arizona open meeting law, the governing board cannot discuss or take any action on items not listed on the agenda. Therefore, pursuant to ARS 38-431.01H, response to public comment about matters not appearing on the agenda will be limited to individual board members who may ask staff to study the matter, respond to any criticism, or ask that the matter be put on a future agenda for further consideration and decision at a later date. Please limit your comments to no more than 3 minutes, and no more than 30 minutes will be devoted to the public comment portion of the agenda. When you approach the podium, please state your name for the record. Our first speaker in this section will be Deborah Bohm.
Deborah Boehm speaking. So Arizona Constitution, which our CPA said was flawed, says that when you take your oath of office, it's a binding oath, and that any violation of that oath is a violation of faith in the system. In my opinion, most of the board, not Dr. Dowling and perhaps Mr. Honig, but the rest of the board have violated their oath of office to support and take the care and consideration of the children and the children's parents as the primary focus of their job. The board, over this past year that I have been attending, year and a half, has not focused on the parents. They have not had their education as the primary function of their job. Instead, they have focused on the matter of diversity and inclusion and equity and their pet project, your pet project of conscious discipline, all of which have led to the education deficit that our children are now experiencing. There's no question about the direct correlation between the two. Owning that and accepting that as your own responsibility and doing something about it would be the right thing to do, but I still don't hear any of that happening. The parents used to think of Litchfield Elementary School District as a destination to move into, to be receiving, for their children to be receiving an quality, high quality education. Teachers would want to work in this school district because this was a district known for its high quality education. Not anymore. Not anymore at all. Real estate, all of the different markers for a community have indicated that Litchfield Elementary School District is a detractor rather than something that's an advantage. This has to change. Your whole agenda needs to change. What was said about picking a proper method of teaching needs to be adjusted. Everything needs to be changed so that educating our children in the basics, ready to become high schoolers, ready to become adults in our community, is where our focus is, not on these trivial side eddies that we've spent an enormous amount of money on.
Our next speaker is Mike Finnegan.
Hello, everyone. My name is Mike Finnegan. I'd like to talk about personnel history and academics at the LASD School District. For the 7 years from 2015 to 2022, the school district, the average percentage of all students not proficient in state academic math proficiency was 49%. The average percentage of all students not proficient in academic English is 46%. This is 7 years of performance. Consistent stagnant results like these year after year from 2015 to 2022 cannot be allowed to continue. From these results, the non-proficient student that was tested in 2015 in third grade is now a non-proficient student tested 7 years later in 2022. That's a tragedy. Those students are facing employment opportunities of $20,000 to $25,000 maximum. The goal of public schools is not first and foremost to be an employer. Niceness sometimes hinders the kind of tough questions and concerns that need to be raised. No one in the LASD school district leadership is held responsible for bad academic outcomes in the past 7 years, and therefore No one has had any reason to change direction. Danielle Clymer has been on the board for 6 or 7 years. Kim Moran, uncontested, came on in 2018. And Jody Gunning has been here for 20+ years and owns all of it. It's time for new board leadership and new superintendent leadership to replace the ones who have been here since 2015 and have not figured out how to improve academic results. How can you justify this status quo? The superintendent is responsible for setting the tone and culture at LASD. This culture needs to change with stronger emphasis on academics, because today's third grader in 2022 is going to take the standard test and found to be not proficient. Can't wait 5 years from now when they're an 8th grader and still be not proficient. It'll be too late for them. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Leanne Migray.
Good evening, Madam President and governing board members. My name is Leanne Migray. I'm a parent, a taxpayer, and a teacher in this district. My purpose in speaking tonight is to share why I'm proud to be an LESD. Humor me and imagine a teacher is a runner, and our school year is a marathon. I'm a well-trained and highly informed runner who's run many marathons before, extensive training and experience, and I know I can finish this marathon. I know there are going to be times where I'm going to be exhausted. I can't imagine continuing, but I also know we'll have water stops. We'll have our friends and family cheering us on along the way to refresh our souls. Speaking specifically of last year, I ran this marathon in the worst conditions possible. The world outside of my school building, outside of my school family, literally beat us every step of the way. People on the sidelines were shouting angry accusations at all of us. It was loud. It was hard to hear our supporters. I finished the race, but just barely. Unfortunately, I have permanent scarring on my soul. In addition to the extraordinary academic and behavioral needs, the school year was more difficult because of how teachers were treated in the media and also here in this very room. Many unkind, not helpful, and honestly not true things have been said about us teachers. It's demeaning, disrespectful, and it's dishonorable to the work that we do every day. You may ask why I decided to come back for another year, and I'll tell you. I had people here in LESD who gave me hope, and I want to acknowledge these people right now and encourage more like them. Mrs. Moran, Mrs. Zaidama, Dr. Dowling, and Mrs. Clymer, you all made it a point to visit classrooms, including mine, when I asked for it. You spent time with some of my favorite people, those children. In every board meeting, you spoke respectfully about our staff, our students, and our families. Here at Litchfield, my admin, my team, other staff members made my days bearable. From offering tangible support to offering a listening ear, a little bit of help, a look of understanding, all of this helped in carrying the weight of the year. I'm not naive. I know that our district isn't perfect, but no district is really. Last year, when I needed it most, I received hope. Hope from the policymakers looking out for my students and my coworkers. Hope when things got difficult. Hope from others who helped me get through. Hope really is powerful. And thanks to the hope that was given to me, I was able to experience one of the best moments of my life. Last year was a hard year. I had a student come in an open house this year, hug me and tell me that she spent the entire summer missing me, that first grade was the best year of her life. It was the absolute worst year of my career. And that's hope. That's what we do every day. We make those connections, we connect with those children, and then the learning happens. And I can't even tell you what we have managed this year so far. So I challenge everyone here tonight to continue spreading hope. We don't have to agree on every issue. We can still spread hope. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Heather Maxwell.
Good evening, President Moran, governing board members. My name is Heather Maxwell, and I'm the behavior coach here at Litchfield Elementary School. This is my 16th year in the Litchfield district and my 26th year as an educator, and I feel incredibly fortunate to be a part of the LESD family.
Working with young children is extremely rewarding, but it is also extremely difficult. Public education is under attack, yet we continue to not only show up every day, but to go above and beyond. So strong is our desire to do what is best for the children in our care. While those outside of education feel like teachers need only to focus on academics, anyone who has spent even a tiny amount of time in a classroom knows that ignoring the mental and emotional health of our students will only hinder any academic goals we may have. Tonight, I want to share a tale of two schools with you. One school where I began my career 25 years ago. The other school is the one where we're sitting tonight. When I began teaching, the district I started in used a behavior management program called Make Your Day. In that setting, behavior was seen as something to be controlled and punished by the adults in the room. Nothing about this program changed behavior. The children who most often struggled with behavior didn't magically stop struggling. They only came to resent their teacher, their school, and education in general. They didn't have a chance to learn new skills or reflect with someone. Teachers weren't expected or trained to teach them how to manage their emotions or to provide behavior interventions that might help them. Many of us still tried to do the best we could, but we were still expected to follow this punitive program even when we could see it wasn't working. As a brand new teacher, I found myself looking for my own ideas, seeking out books and research about child development to help my students. Fast forward about a decade or so to when I was in Litchfield and we adopted conscious discipline. Now teachers are learning the skills to regulate themselves so they can help all kids feel safe and connected. We provide structures and routines in the classroom that build a tight-knit classroom family where children take care of each other. We give children the skills they need to manage their own upset or ask for help when they can't do it alone. We have behavior coaches that provide strategies and interventions to help our students that struggle the most. And we dive deep into the causes of the behavior and develop interventions tailored to the specific needs of each child rather than using a blanket punishment for all of them. And it works. Sometimes not on the timeline we'd prefer, but it does work. Disconnected children become connected. Fearful children become children who are feeling safe in our care. And you know, without feeling safe and without feeling connected, no child can learn the academic content we're expecting to teach them. So I'm incredibly thankful that our district adopted conscious discipline and continue to believe it is what is best for not only our children,
Your
but the
time is up,
adults
Ms. Maxwell.
entrusted with their care.
Our next speaker is Cynthia Schwartz.
Cynthia Schwartz. Is this working? To the teachers, I support public education. I worked in the toughest high school in Brooklyn, New York for 18 months until they did away with temporary licenses. My issue is not with the teachers, and we do not badmouth or say anything wrong about you. My issue is with the board and with the administration. I'm going to hold it up again. This is not a strategic plan. A one-page, half-page PowerPoint slide is not a strategic plan. And the board has never pressed the administration to come up with a strategic plan. Also about conscious discipline, the issue that one of the reasons we have, Ms. Duplain, have an issue with conscious discipline are the statements from Dr. Bailey, how there was going to be soaring academics. Also, she adopted Cassell and her links to Ibram X. Kendi. That is one of the issues that we have with conscious discipline. It has not delivered all of these soaring academics, and neither has Kagan. And Kagan has also started to integrate SEL and Cassell. So if you can't measure it, how can you evaluate the program and how can you manage it? In business school, there's something called a BHAG. And I have told this to Kim Moran and also to Jody Gunning. It's a big, hairy, audacious goal. And in the 1950s, there was a company in Japan who said they wanted to have their products in every single home in the United States. That was a BHAG. The name of that company was Sony. And that is what strategic planning is all about. We are living from one year to the next year. And I think some of the parents, the public, and what's going on in this country want more, and they want these kids to succeed. If you take a look at the analysis that I did, and the teachers, you may want to see what I've done, ask the board or the administration for it. Your 7th graders, your 8th graders graduated with a deficit of 28 points in math. Your 7th graders, ELA -12, -18. Your 6th graders are actually in pretty good shape. And your 5th grade are up 11 and 12. There is something wrong with what's going on in this district from the top up, not the bottom up. And I think this board needs a strategic plan. And Mr. Honak threw out 20 basis points. Go for it.
Our next speaker is Katie Hill.
Good evening, Madam President, Mrs. Gunning, Dr. Ducey, Governing Board and Executive Board. My name is Katie Hill, and I've been a parent, resident, and employee of the Litchfield Elementary School District for 22 years. So I've been around a long time. I am currently the reading specialist here at Litchfield Elementary School. When I first decided to address the governing board, my plan was to originally just walk around, ask kids for quotes about why they love our school. And I was just going to tell you why they love our school. So in case you don't get on campuses enough, you would have heard it. But as I was working with students on Friday, my whole focus changed. We have so many students who come to us with a variety of backgrounds. Some, I wonder, I'll be honest, like how much time should I devote here with this student when I don't know how long they're going to be in front of me? They might move. I have so many other students who I know need me too. However, our campus wholeheartedly believes that everyone matters. So we painted it on the wall, you matter. Every opportunity, every day, and honestly, no matter what it takes. And that's not always easy for any of us. Students come to us with trauma that many of us can't even begin to fathom. And resulting behaviors from that are hard for everyone, from staff to the students. But they make connections with staff and on this campus, especially Mrs. Maxwell, our behavior coach, and our behavior tech, Mr. Isaiah. So thank you for approving behavior techs because they are making a huge difference. They make friends that they have never had before, and students are developing positive relationships with school because there are a lot that come to us and they hate school. They do. Whatever they've experienced before has been so negative, they don't want to be here. So on Friday, I was meeting with a student who is relatively new to our campus. They started last year. And after we met, they said to me, I never thought I'd be able to read. Now he's almost 10 and he's reading CVC words, but he's reading and he never thought he could do that. So he has a new positive relationship with school, thanks to the community that we've created here and thanks to our district, which has helped us create that community. Thank you for providing all of these opportunities because he has hope and every kid deserves hope. I'm proud to be a member of this school district family because we bought shirts this year that say it, we are Litchfield strong. So anybody that wants one, it's the whole district, not just our school. So let us know. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Allison Atkins.
Someone's timing me. Okay. Hi, everyone. I'm Allison Atkins. I am a parent of 3 children in the district. I was a student, so I think I beat Katie. And my mother-in-law worked here for a very long time. So very invested in the district and the community. One thing, I usually watch these online because I have 3 children and I work. And it's very busy. And so one suggestion I might have for you all to consider is a virtual some kind of call to the public, as a lot of people, it may bring a more diverse might bring more diverse voices into the conversation. The first thing I want to say tonight is my appreciation for teachers and staff in the district. Research suggests, I think someone else said that teachers are the most influential part of a child's education. I was glad to hear the comments about asking what the teachers need in the classroom with this money. Because for me, as a parent, I want my kids' teachers to have the tools that they need to have a really successful year. And I am actually more concerned about them feeling connected and a sense of belonging than one singular test score that they may have had. I want to talk about some of the things that the district has done that I've really appreciated as a parent and community member. So I felt like I had a voice in the discussion about dress code last year. I have noticed that you're using ESSER funding to fund tutoring for students at schools, which is awesome. There's no cost to it. And I believe people are being paid to do it, which I also really appreciate. I love that behavior techs were hired at every campus. I think that's phenomenal in helping with that connectedness and that belonging. I've heard that there is a paraprofessional hired in grade levels K through 2, which is just extraordinary because little people are hard. I mean, people are hard, but little people are especially hard in large numbers. I've heard that you're using the funds to fulfill the goal of one-to-one technology and a bunch of other stuff that I'm not going to get to right now, so I'll send it in an email. But what I would like to do for those of you listening at home who may be like, what do I do to support the district? Some of the things that I do to support our district is to volunteer. I know schools are opening up volunteer opportunities like copying, lunch rooms, all sorts of things. We've been successful in recruiting subs from the community. So I think that that's a really good way if you have the means to do that and it's paid. That's fun. Voting is really important. I, for one, will be voting for the override continuation, and I suggest that others research it in its fullest because it is beneficial for students. Research tax credits in your school has lots of information on how you can use tax credits to help. So great job. Keep it up.
That is the end of our community opportunity for comment section. We will now move on to agenda item 6, which is motion to approve consent agenda items. I will ask each board member if they have any items they would like to remove from the consent agenda. Dr. Dowling, do you have any items you would like to remove?
I have a question on item 7O.
All right, I will give you an opportunity to ask your question once we decide what, if anything, needs to be removed. Board members, do you have any items you would like to remove?
Nothing to remove.
I'm sorry, did you say no?
Sorry, no.
Thank you. Board member Clymer, do you have any items you would like to remove?
No, nothing to be removed. Thank you.
Board member Honak.
No.
And I also do not have any items that I would like to remove. So I will now give Dr. Dowling the opportunity to ask his question on agenda item 7O, the intergovernmental agreement for the fast track high school course credit between Litchfield and Agua Fria.
Okay, my question is very simple. We still get a 1.0 for these students, do they not? That's a 0 hour, an extra hour. Okay. So we don't split any money with okay, we're not losing ADM. That was my concern. And then the question is, if we had 100 kids, would the cost go up? Yeah.
At this time, I do not believe that the cost would go up. We've had it the same for the last 10 years.
Okay, they're just paying for the teacher then.
Correct.
That's my question. That was it.
All right, thank you.
Just to give some clarification for those who might not know about this program, we do work in cooperation with the Agua Fria School District to allow our 8th graders to go to the high school for 9th grade algebra. Traditionally, it's taken in ninth grade if you're on a math track, and we do not offer that in our eighth grade, but we identify students in sixth, seventh, or eighth grade who might be good candidates for this program. And I happen to know Board Member Clymer's daughter is currently participating in this program, and many others have, and they really enjoy that because that puts them on track then to be able to complete all of the available math classes, including AP Calculus in the high school. If there are no other board member questions or comments, I will entertain a motion.
I motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
I will second.
I believe Board Member Clymer seconded. Having a first and a second, I will call for the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. We will now move on to agenda item 8A, which is approval of the 2022-2023 revised budget number 1, as previously discussed in the hearing. Do we have any additional board member comments or questions?
Yes,
Regarding.
I have one question on the on the cover sheet, on the explanation, the recommendation. I noticed that we had on the average, on the ADM, on the revised budget, we had a decrease of 323.71 ADM students. How did we miss that boat? I mean, we're not over-reporting attendance, are we? I mean, we got in trouble for this once before.
Yeah, so the ADM estimate that was in the initial proposed budget and adopted budget that I believe you're comparing against was based on estimates at the end of last year and growth estimates that were provided by our demographer. For this budget revision, I looked at what we were sending up to ADE for ADM as of September 1st and applied a growth factor consistent with what we saw last year between the 40th instructional day and the 100th instructional day. I believe the growth estimate used previously might have been a little bit too aggressive. I did look at ADM compared to what we were reporting last year because I saw the same change, Dr. Dowling, and we are up compared to where we were this time last year as far as ADM. But I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, I just look at it because that's a loss of 5,000 a student. That's $1.6 million. We got be a little bit more closer, and that's a lot of money. You know, that's about 20 full-time teachers. So I kind of look at things like that.
Yeah.
But that was my concern on that.
Board Member Clymer, do you have any additional questions or comments before we move to approve this item?
No, I don't have any additional comments. I would just like to reiterate the request from earlier in the public hearing, but otherwise no additional comments.
Thank you. Board Member Honak, do you have any additional comments or questions before we entertain a motion to approve this item?
No.
Thank you. Then I will move to approve the 2022-2023 revised budget number 1 as presented.
I second.
Having a first and a second, I will call for the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Our next item is agenda item 8B, approval of revision to superintendent evaluation instrument. This will be presented by Superintendent Gunning.
Madam President, members of the governing board, we are not presenting this tonight for approval because we still have more additional information to add. We did want to show the update that we did change some verbiage to in the scoring to consensus. And then next week, I believe it's on Wednesday, President Moran and I will be meeting to finalize the data components, the student achievement components to bring back to you on the 27th. So then you'll have those updates as well. So just wanted to provide a brief update tonight on kind of where we were in the process, not requesting approval at this time.
So I will comment on this as well. We have all the feedback of the discussion that we had at our last meeting regarding this evaluation tool, including specifically the growth numbers and the comparisons to West Valley districts and peer districts. And we are going to work on refining those to make sure that we have concrete numbers that we are aiming toward. We thought we would have that ready for tonight, and we do not. So we're going to make sure that we get this right. So we're going to take the time needed to make sure that all of those numbers are where they need to be. So as Superintendent Gunning mentioned, she and I will get together on Wednesday, and then we will bring this back to the board for actual approval of the tool. Any board member questions or comments as to this status update? I believe since it is on the agenda to approve and we are not approving it, we would follow the protocol that we did at our last meeting, which is to move to table this item for a future agenda. Will Superintendent Gunning, for clarification, will this be on the September 27th agenda for approval? Do you anticipate?
That's what we were planning to do so that we could finalize it and then just quickly update it.
Okay, so I will move to table this to our September 27th meeting.
I second.
Having a first and a second, I will call for the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. That is the end of our potential action items for this evening. The remainder of the meeting will be information and discussion only. Our next item is item 9A, discussion of a draft of the school year calendar for the 2023-2024 school year. This will be presented by Executive Director DeCoste.
Good evening, President Moran, members of the board, virtual and in person. You have a draft of the calendar attached to your, in your packet or attached to board docs. It is very typical calendar for us. It's similar to the one that we have this year with the same amount of professional early release days for teachers, the same amount of in-service days, et cetera. So I just wanted to open it up for discussion and see if there was anything particular that you had questions about before we drafted any further.
I do
Yeah,
not have any questions. I think the calendar looks great. It looks like a typical year, and I think if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Dr. Dowling?
Yeah, I still have a question, same question I had when we approved this year's calendar. Agua Fria's, I assume we work in conjunction with Agua Fria a little bit on calendars, or do we not?
We typically work in conjunction with Agua Fria and Avondale because we share a lot of students, and Avondale has not adopted a calendar yet. So this is off of similar to what Agua Fria has going for next year is already adopted.
Here's my concern is that Agua Fria High School District has their early release days. I think they're early release, or are they late start?
Early release.
On Wednesdays, we have ours on Fridays. Now, here's my concern. Some of those families have kids in our district and kids in the high school district. When they're off, the kids are off, sometimes those high school kids take care of those little kids, siblings. But since they're off on Wednesdays and we have early release on Fridays, that doesn't happen. So parents may have to pay for childcare, may have to take a day off from work. I would like to see some kind of continuity. So if that's the case and parents need those older kids to watch the younger ones,
They do theirs weekly, and then they sometimes vary between like a late start and early release. So I hear one board member saying we want to align to early release on Wednesdays. I don't know how that impacts our families. I know that a couple of years ago, we did surveys about that, and our parents lean toward the choice of a Friday early release. I mean, I could go back and share those survey results with you, or we could resurvey the community to see if that really does have an impact. But if my memory serves me correctly, it wasn't as big of an impact as what we would think and what you're considering.
so they've been surveyed.
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
And I've never seen evidence.
It was probably before you were on. I mean, I could share the old one with you. We could resurvey about Wednesday versus Friday.
Yeah, if you could just send that to me.
Another reason was with transportation issues. So I was hard matching up with them with a Wednesday, and with our developmental preschoolers having the Fridays off. That helps with our transportation too. So, because they're 4 days a week, Monday through Thursday. So.
Good.
Any other questions?
Board Member Clymer, do you have any questions on the calendar?
I do not. I tend to agree with you. It looks very similar to last year. And I think, and Mrs. DeCoste, you can tell me otherwise. I don't think we've had any significant comments from parents or teachers asking us to change or realign our calendar that I know of from that last survey. So I tend to agree. This looks very similar to this past year, which seems to be successful. So I'm in favor of keeping it as similar as we can.
Board Member Honak.
I have no strong feelings. I think that it's, I don't have any problems.
Okay.
Thank you. I will still share those previous survey results with you guys. Thank you.
Excellent. We will move on to agenda item 9B, the first reading of policy revision JLDA, school counselors and psychologists. This item will be presented by Executive Director DePlane.
Thank you. Good evening, President Moran, members of the governing board. This is the first read for policy revision JLDA. This is the recent changes are due to legislation changes. If you have any questions about this revision.
I understand that the board members can read this policy revision as well as the folks at home, but could you give us a summary?
Sure, absolutely. So this revises JLDA as the district may provide school-based referrals for behavioral health services to a contracted behavioral health service provider pursuant to the Children's Behavioral Health Service Fund or for services through the Arizona Healthcare Cost Containment System. Parents may annually opt into the school-based referrals. There will be a survey of parents whose children were referred under this policy, and the district's website shall contain a list of behavioral service providers with whom we contract. So that is the revision to this policy, and it's based on the expectations from Jake's Law in 2020.
I've got a question, Jeremy Honak.
Board Member Honak?
Yeah, I just reading it quickly, it's hard for me to see a difference, and I'm not really asking that it be explained other than just to reiterate. I believe what you said, that it was being done just because of a change in the law or something like that.
Yes, Board Member Honak, that is accurate. And the law stipulated a couple additions that we had to revise our policy to reflect.
Thank you.
Board Member Clymer, do you have any questions on this first read?
Yes, I have two quick questions, hopefully. Director DuPlane, can you give us an example of behavioral health services that we would refer children to, is my first question. And my second question is, or, you know, what type of services that is, or people that we contract with. And then my second question is the sentence says parents may annually opt into the school-based referrals. So give me an example. Let's say if we have a student year one, let's say that is their parents opt in, I guess, to the survey and are part of that school-based referral system. In year 2, are we required to survey them again in order for them to get that same referral? Or what does that process actually look like in real life?
Yes, thank you, Board Member Clymer. Your first question, we contract with Touchstone for our school-based services. And what that will look like is that now with originally, prior to Jake's Law, they opted in at the referral. When the child is first referred, the parent can agree or decline. Now this states that we must allow them annually to opt in, and our Touchstone providers will be including that in their annual evaluation and placement process. And you may have asked about the survey as well. All of our parents are surveyed annually by Touchstone. Any parent who has a child who receives Touchstone services is annually surveyed, and that will continue.
Director DePlain, I would like you to clarify. You said that you used to opt in at the referral point, but now they'll opt in annually. Touchstone will handle that, I guess. Is that still, we opt them in initially with the referral and then
Yes.
it's annually after? Okay,
Yes,
just making
yes, absolutely. And actually, this stipulates now that prior to a referral happening, the parents have to sign off and agree to that referral being submitted to Touchstone. So we will continue our practice in requesting parent permission prior to referring a child for Touchstone services.
Dr. Dowling, do you have any questions?
No, I don't.
Excellent. Then we will revisit this at a future meeting for our second reading and adoption.
Thank you.
Our next item is item 9C, first reading of policy revision BEDB. This will be presented by Superintendent Gunning.
Madam President, members of the governing board, we wanted to bring back BEDB to add a few items and to rearrange a couple items in the special meeting area. If you notice, we wanted to move the call to order, or not call to order, call to the audience above the presentation of any items, because before it was kind of at the end, which then would mean that you wouldn't necessarily hear the audience's responses prior to making any decisions. We also added in our Pledge of Allegiance and moment of silence, just like we would have in a typical meeting. We added those in as well. There is, for the information and discussion items, we have those up a little bit higher. If you're wondering, like, why is that different in a special meeting versus a typical meeting? A lot of times in a special meeting, we might have a guest speaker present, and that allows them to come and then leave. So it just allows a little more flexibility for the presenter.
Thank you. I would like to suggest and hear board member feedback on the differences between these two agendas that we have to set in stone here tonight. So obviously we can change them at a future time, but I would like for us to have consistency between the regular meetings and special meetings. I'm not really sure why those would be different. So right now in our regular meeting, we have agenda item D, which is recognitions and presentations. That allows outside speakers to come in and do a presentation and not have to stay for the entire meeting. And we have information and discussion items later in agenda item H. I don't know that we need both of those items in special meetings. Maybe we do, but I personally do not like having information and discussion items in a different order for special meetings than regular meetings. I would prefer to see a separate agenda item for presentations. We wouldn't normally do recognitions at a special meeting, but if we have a presentation, that would be potentially different from an information and discussion item, in my view. Do any board members have feedback on that?
I
I
do.
feel like if we're gonna make this be the same as our regular meeting, then why wouldn't we just have 2 regular meetings a month then, rather than have to have them be the identical agenda necessarily?
Is
I
it-
agree. I've wherever I've worked we just had a board meeting. Now, if you had a session attached to the board meeting, it would go first, but the agenda would be the same. But since we're talking about board meetings, for consistency purposes, why don't we have them at the same time? Every time we have the agenda or it comes out, I have to check 4 or 5 times because I'm just so afraid I'm going to be late when it's a 5:30 start time instead of a 6. Make it 5:30 across the board and be done with it. Is there something that was what caused the different time?
Generally, our regular meetings start at 6. Occasionally, we have a hearing or some other or a special meeting. Special meetings are supposed to be that special meetings when we don't have a regular meeting twice a month. That's not our board protocol. So a special meeting is supposed to be a meeting that's called for a separate reason or that's used for a separate reason. We don't set the time. We rely on the administration to set the time. So I think Superintendent Gunning would be the person to answer that question.
Can I comment? Is it a good time, Jeremy Honak?
Go ahead.
Yes, I agree with Dr. Dowling about the time thing. I think that's sort of nerve-wracking. But as far as this change, I like it the way I like the change, and I think it makes a lot of sense. And I'm just kind of in favor of not having the general meeting, but to have one be the special meeting, because there's significant things. I believe special meetings, we never vote. And I think that's important. And someone can correct me if I'm wrong. I noticed that it has strike through on call to the audience. So, and that originally we never had to call the audience at the special meeting. So I'm assuming this is a revision to a previous change. Is that correct? Somebody could say.
We added, if you look, we just moved call to the audience up higher in the special meeting.
Yeah, no, I understand it was done earlier, but it was a recent thing. It was at the end. So anyway, that's my only question. And other than the 5:30 thing that Dr. Dowling said, the time thing, which I don't, I'm sure there's some reasons for it, but if there was a way to make it consistent, I think everybody would like it. I know the public would really like it. And, but other than that, I like it. I like the call to order moved earlier. I think everything in here is perfecto bingo. Thank you.
We do vote in special meetings. We just don't vote in study sessions, just to clarify that for Mr. Honak.
If not every study session is a special meeting, but sometimes special meetings are also study sessions.
Okay, so thank you. I'll have to ponder that one.
Mayor Clymer, do you have any feedback on this first read of policy BEDB?
I agree with your assessment regarding the presentations. I think I'd like to, be careful about, switching it around and having the information and discussion, prior to consent and action. And I understand what Superintendent Gunning was saying about presentations and trying to be respectful of time for people that come in to make presentations to our district. I think we could remedy that by just having a presentations section as we do in our regular meeting. And then allowing the information and discussion to be at the end like we have before. One question that I have in regards to board members' Idema's comment about why don't we just have 2 regular meetings? This is a legitimate question. I'm not sure. What is truly the difference between a regular meeting and a special meeting now that we're changing our policy to reflect these agenda changes we're talking about? Is there really any significant legal definition or difference between a special meeting and a regular meeting that we should be aware of before we really have that conversation?
I can't hear if somebody's talking. I can't hear anything if someone's talking.
President Moran, is someone from the administration responding to the question, or we're not able to hear anything?
Yeah, I don't hear anything either. It's like it's frozen. It was breaking up before.
Give us a moment. We're going to work on this.
Testing. Can you hear me now?
Yes, you're back. Thank you so much.
Please read that again, Superintendent Gunning.
Okay, special meeting may be called whenever deemed necessary. Written or telephone notice of all special meetings shall be given to the members of the board 24 hours in advance. Said notice shall indicate the purpose of the special meeting, meaning that it could be a study session or it could be a meeting that includes action. No business other than the matters specified in the notice shall be transacted at such meeting. The special meetings gives you multiple options. Could be study session, could be a meeting where, like at the beginning of the year, where we have a lot of hiring and those types of things that need to transpire. Or it could be something that needs to take place as an urgent matter, even later or during the year, as we experienced during COVID time.
Thank you, Superintendent Gunning. It sounds to me like maybe this just offers us some additional flexibility than a regular meeting. If that is the case, it seems like it might be appropriate to leave it as a special meeting and just adjust the agenda as we've discussed this evening.
I agree. The additional items that would be in a regular meeting that would not be in a special meeting would be the recognitions and then the reports from the superintendent as well as the board and our administrators. I would not want to ask our administrators to produce more than one report per month. So I would prefer that under these special meetings, we just add a section for presentations that's before the action items and consent items, and then move the information and discussion down. If the presentation is blank, great. If the information and discussion is blank and we don't have items to discuss there, I just would like to keep consistency between the two types of meetings as much as possible. Board Member Zaidama?
It doesn't really matter to me, to be honest. I think that we are meeting twice a month anyways right now. So personally, I feel like we should actually consider going to 2 general meetings a month. But as far as this goes, I don't, whatever the board wants to do, I'm fine. It doesn't really matter to me.
Dr. Dowling, do you have any feedback on this?
Yeah, it doesn't make any difference. I mean, I've never seen special meetings. It's always been 2 regular meetings a month, except in the summertime. But if this is how the best way to do business and the majority of the board is approves it, I'd like to get the time consistent so I don't have to check at the last minute and worry about it.
Board Member Honak, do you have any feedback?
Everything is fine. I just like Dr. Dowling's suggestion about the time, but I think this is perfect.
Board Member Clymer?
No additional comments. Thank you.
Then I would like to move to approve actually, I'm sorry, we're not moving. What I would like to do is bring this back, I guess, at our next meeting. I guess we can't vote, but we can, I get the feeling there's a lot of, it doesn't matter, but I feel like consistency does matter. So I would like to see this change. And I guess I'm not sure if we can come to an actual consensus on that issue.
It doesn't matter to me. So if that's important to you, I'm fine. Like, I'm good with whatever people want to do. Like, that's all I'm saying. I'm not saying that like it has to stay this way. I'm good with whatever changes people want to make.
Well, this is the first reading, so it has to come
Yes.
back anyway.
Yes, it does have to come back for a second reading. So can we revise this on the second reading then to have special meeting item E be presentations and then move the other items down in alphabetical order, as well as move the information and discussion items after the action items as is consistent with our regular meetings, would be my request for the second read.
Can we add time?
I don't know that we want to make that a policy. I mean, I think that's a request as a courtesy, but do we want to put the time in our policy?
I don't think we put that in our policy because you never know if like we're gonna need a special meeting like middle of the day sometime. I mean, we have had to do that in the past, but in general, because we're having two meetings, I think what you're saying is that if we could just plan for our meetings to be the same time, unless it's actually a special case situation, and
Could
then
be a
we do.
special select.
Right.
That's what I'm talking. Now you're gonna have a different agenda for a special. That- Okay. But it has to come
President
back.
Moran,
Okay, I believe that concludes the discussion on agenda item 9C.
President Moran, I'm sorry, this is Danielle. One more clarification.
I'm sorry, Board Member Clymer, will you repeat that, please?
Yes, just one more clarification. You said you wanted to change E on the special meetings to be presentations to reflect the regular meeting agenda. What would need to happen actually would be D would become the presentations. The call to the audience would move down one, and then information and discussion would move down to the end. So it would be call to the order, pledge, moment of silence, presentations, then call to the audience if we wanted them to be the exact same.
Yes, I thought that was what I said. If that was not what I said, that is what I intended. Do I need to read each of these letters and?
No, I don't think so. I just wanted to make sure as we go back from the second meeting, let's just, we're saying, let's make it match the regular meeting. Let's just make sure that it matches the regular meeting. That was all.
Agreed. Okay, thank you for the clarification. I believe we are now ready to move on to agenda item 10A, which is the report from Superintendent Gunning.
Madam President, members of the governing board, mine will be brief, even though it was a very busy month. I attended the ASBA Law Conference with many of you last week, learned very valuable information. Also, over the last month, I've been with Dr. Doozy conducting goal setting for all of our principals and executive directors, and then visiting campuses as we started the year.
Thank you. We will now move on to reports from governing board members. I will go in alphabetical order today since we're not really in a seated order. So Board Member Clymer.
Sure, I'm happy to start. I will keep mine also brief. As Superintendent Gunning mentioned, several of the board members attended the Arizona School Board Association Law Conference, where we learned about all of the recent changes to the Arizona Revised Statutes and how they affect our students and our families. Very interesting information. Very glad that we have this resource. And I think we will, continue to see some policy revisions based on those changes that we learned at this conference. And secondly, I was earlier this month invited to review the forthcoming school spending tool. That will be a website that will come out later this fall alongside other school board members, some legislators, community members, parents, et cetera. I think it's going to be a great tool for people at all levels, all different types of stakeholders to better understand school funding. And I think this is something that, the state has invested a lot of time and resources in, and I'm excited to see how it turns out and to help educate our families and our community a little bit more into the sometimes crazy world of school funding. So interested to see how that turns out. Thank you. That's all I have for this month.
Thank you, Board Member Clymer. Dr. Dowling.
Yes, unfortunately, I couldn't make it to that conference last week. Some things came up and I just couldn't get away. If you want me to reimburse the district for the cost of the conference I failed to attend, take it out of my paycheck. But anyway, I appreciate the teachers who came here tonight, spending, working in the classroom all day long. You take time out to come here and speak, and you're here until 8 o'clock now. Hopefully this meeting will be over sooner than later. And parents who have come out, I appreciate everything you guys do. I've been there. I know what you're going through, and I really appreciate everything that you do. It's time for the district just to start winning again. We just need to get back to where the district thought they were a few years ago. And we need to set some goals academically as a school district. We have to decide if, at some point you start saying we're good, and then you lose sight of what it takes to be great. And I'd like to see this school district be great, be winners, win academically, win for our teachers who work so hard, and for our students, and empower those parents, engage the parents to please come in here and help us. The caregivers, the grandparents, whoever is watching the welfare of that child, that's the person we have to connect with. Could be a grandparent, could be an uncle, aunt, an older sibling in some cases, a group home. We just, as a district, we owe that to the people that we serve, to the students, to the people in the community. And that's all I have for tonight.
Thank you, Dr. Dowling. Board Member Honak?
Hi, Jeremy Honak. I don't believe I've ever said anything negative about teachers. I never would. My mom was a teacher. I have a lot of friends that are teachers, some at LESD, and I think that teachers are doing a great job by and large. I mean, they're humans like everybody else. Some are better than others, but I don't have a beef with teachers. As a matter of fact, I think we have incredible resources in this school district. We have beautiful buildings. We have beautiful, we have an incredible school district. I think the leadership of our school district, I'll just be polite, leaves a lot to be desired. It's not really leadership at all. And I think part of the problem is they just don't even understand the goals. It's just like you can't convince them. So I sound like I'm criticizing the school district. This school district deserves criticism. It's not doing 10% of what it could be doing. There are school districts with much less resources that are doing way better. And it's a tragedy, it's a shame, but it's not the fault of teachers. You can't blame the employees of a company if the people running it are aimless and have no clue. And in this case, I do not blame the teachers at all. And it's a tragedy. I feel for them because I think they would like to know and get calls from their kids 10 years later saying, thank you so much. I'm, a rocket scientist, or I'm applying for the space thing, or I'm applying whatever. I think a teacher, I was able to talk to a teacher and actually the principal of a school that I really helped. And they were just almost at the point of tears, when I explained what the effect that they had and one of the teachers there. So that's that. I want to make it really, really clear. We need our school district repaired, not the teachers. The teachers will do what direction they get. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Board Member Honak. I am going to go next since I'm in the alphabetical order. So Board Member Zaidama, I will get to you. I have not forgotten about you. This month, I had numerous chats with Superintendent Gunning as always, and we did have a special meeting to discuss the evaluation tool, and we will have another one, as we mentioned earlier, later this month. I also attended the special meeting that we had on August 30th, which was very informative and productive. Thank you. I was also able to attend the ASBA Law Conference with two of my fellow board members and various members of the administration as well, which was basically 3 days of education related to the policy changes and the new laws and acts of legislation, both at the federal and state levels. It was extremely informative, as it always is. My brain was on total overload by day 3, but thankfully I took lots of notes. And I came away from that with many action items to complete and topics to learn more about. And again, thankfully, I love to learn, so that is right up my alley. The last thing I want to touch on this month is somehow I've gotten in this routine of when the kids go back to school, then I take time for myself. And so I spent a lot of time this month on self-care. I have my routine doctor's appointments, dentist appointment, dermatologist appointments. And I just want to emphasize how important it is to prioritize your health. And I hope that teachers are utilizing the contracted substitutes that we have put in place on their campuses to make similar appointments for the good of their physical health, even during the regular school day. Don't delay your self-care. As Beyonce said in Run the World, strong enough to bear the children and then get back to business. Board Member Zaidema.
This has felt like an extremely long month, actually, because school started and we had a meeting right when school started. So basically everything of school starting was right after that. And in the midst of all the craziness going on, we had sickness run through our house. We made it 3 days into school before everybody got sick in our house over the next 3 weeks, but I still managed to do a lot of board business. First, I was able to, so part of my thing that I said last time was that I want to join all the PTAs and PTSAs in our district to support their membership goals, because I believe strongly that parent groups are a vital part of our success for our students. If our parents are engaged, then our students are going to be more successful. That's super important. Not everybody in this board agrees about everything, but I think we all agree that that is very, very important. And we all want to see that be promoted on every single campus. So that's still out there. I've been working on getting connected with the different parent groups and getting signed up for them. So please, if you haven't had me sign up yet, send me an email and I will get signed up. I did get to attend a PTA meeting for one of the schools. And then also that same day, the principal did a volunteer training, which I bring this up because this year we're having volunteers going back on campus. And one of the ways that community members' parents can get involved is by volunteering at their schools. So I encourage anybody that's got extra time to go through volunteer training that our district requires and get signed up to be a volunteer in our schools. This is a great way to do small groups, make copies, whatever it is to help our teachers, which is going to help our students. We all want our kids to be successful, so let's all be part of the team of making that happen. What else we did this month? I was attending the special meeting. We all had the special meeting at the end of August. I feel like that was really important because we're all trying to come together and come up with goals for our superintendent. That's our job as a board, to evaluate the superintendent, and we're trying to create meaningful goals and hold our superintendent accountable. And I think that it's important. One of the things you're seeing is we want to have these stretch goals. We're talking about pushing ourselves and we want to do better and be better. And I agree, let's push ourselves as far as we can. I also want us to be realistic and make sure that we don't push ourselves so far that we break. I think it's important to find a balance between reasonable expectations and pushing ourselves. So while I want to see our district be super successful, and I will continue to promote that as a parent, as a board member, because the more successful our district is, the better it is for all our students and my kids that are here. I want to make sure that we're just being very realistic in what we can expect. I also attended the law conference, which is the law conference for ASBA, I believe, is by far the best training that they offer all year long. It's the most informative. We learn the most things from it. It's a great way for us, after the legislature is over and done their stuff, for us to now learn, here's what these laws mean for schools. And obviously the big topic was HB 2161, which is the parents' rights, which I am very happy that we're a public school and that we promote parents' rights in our district, and that we are going to support that and encourage our parents to be involved and know what's going on in their kids' schools, because parents should be involved 100%. As a side note, one of the things we did learn about HB 2161 and parents' rights is that for those who choose to take their kids to a private school, if they choose to do the ESA voucher program, you leave your parent rights at the door. Those don't follow you. The HB 2161 specifically applies to government entities, which is our public schools. That does not apply to private schools, as those are not government entities. So just a thought for people to know as they go forward about that. I also have had several chats with the superintendent this month. She is always responsive whenever I have questions. I'm not good at scheduling the regular times, but anytime I have a question, I just reach out to her and she's always quick to answer me. The last thing I also did was I was picked by our board to be our voting delegate at the delegate assembly, where they get to determine what the political agenda this year, the delegate assembly, they were deciding what their political agenda will be for the year. And usually this is a very long meeting, and while it was pretty long, it was not as long as it's been in the past, actually. But there was lots of discussion going on. And of course, the most heated conversation was about gun violence, which I expected that would probably be the case. I was very impressed with the conversations that happened. People were being polite and respectful to one another and listening to each other and the different viewpoints that they had. They did not try to push for things that would do gun control. They try to stay away from that, as that is not what they were trying to do, but more talk about what are the root causes of things that are happening. They also focused on things like violence in general and self-harm. So there was lots of discussions. There were a few people in the mental health field that were there that were able to give us some insight. So it was just great to kind of hear that feedback. And the political agenda passed as it was presented with very minimal, maybe some word changing, but mostly that any amendments that were put forward to add additional things did not go through. But it was a good conversation and I was happy to go. And because we went longer than they were hoping, Chris Cotterman then got to karaoke sing Devil Went Down to Georgia for us. So that was kind of fun little end to that day. But otherwise, it was a very busy month. And again, I'd like to go back to encouraging people to join their parent groups in the district, sign up to be a volunteer. Community members can do this, not just parents. So if you're here and you're engaged in our schools, then I know you want to see our schools do better. So I know that you're going to be willing to sign up and volunteer in our schools. Thank you.
Thank you, Board Member Zaidama. I would also like to offer my thanks to our principals and district administrators for submitting their reports this month, as they do every month. I've said it before and I'll say it again. The board members really appreciate having that information directly from you on what you are doing in your departments and what is happening on your campuses, and seeing those photos and getting updates on all the wonderful things that you're doing. We appreciate that. I will now entertain a motion to adjourn.
I motion to adjourn.
I will second. Having a first and a second, I will call for the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. This meeting is